It's a tough loss on with the eyes, but at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot you can hang your head about. It's going to be okay for BYU in the end. This is just a tough loss that isn't going to mean much, right? It's the semifinals. Would you have liked to win it? Yeah, but there's a lot of stories here that we're going to talk about. And when Karter gets in here, we'll ask him some questions about this Houston team, about BYU's response in the second half, how they looked. Right off the bat, here's some interesting things for y'all. BYU scored less today than they scored back in January when they first played Houston, and we thought that BYU just looked abysmal, right? And they lost by 31 in that game. Today, losing by 20, but only scoring 54 after having such an insane offensive output over the last month or so is pretty crazy. And obviously a point to talk about. But I want to know how you guys feel in the chat. I mean, look, you lose big, but it doesn't feel nearly as bad as that January loss, right? Obviously, losing by 20 isn't as bad as losing by 31. So you could say they improved offensively. You can say a lot of things about how they made this game better than that one. But it's also really hard to try and compare the two games. At the end of the day, this BYU team is different. This Houston team is different. They're obviously still really good. And Houston or BYU is still also much better. But at the end of the day, Houston comes away with a big win. So if you were to compare the two losses, if you were to talk about this one, I'd say that if anything, I think BYU commanded a lot more respect from Houston. I think they always had it. I don't think it's that bad. But this Houston team, I think, game planned extensively for BYU. I think they had exactly what they wanted to do in mind here. And they were able to execute it, which I think just shows that people now take BYU seriously, which is good. And that they have a legitimate offense that you need to really plan around and figure out. But also, if you're BYU, right, that didn't really show today. You didn't have the response or maybe the game plan for a really physical and really, really good Houston team. But Karter, you're back. What's up?
Hello. Just was busy doing something else real quick. Had to delay the start real quick. Potential heart attack on the line for myself, but no worries. We're here. BYU falls by 20 to Houston. Have you? How long you been going? 50 seconds. It looks like.
A little bit longer. That's like 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to fix it on the post-it. Anyhow, I don't know what you've talked about so far. I wasn't able to tune in to the recording right now, but shout out everyone in the chat. Tough loss for the Cougars tonight. My initial thoughts from this game, Chase. It was the exact opposite of what I honestly wanted to see. I don't think this game's totally lost where there's zero positives in this spot. I think there are a couple positives to pinpoint to, specifically K-Bikeda. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of a disastrous loss. And the number one thing that everybody had pointed to as BYU's number one weakness this year: wait until they have to play a physical team like Houston or the Tennessees of the world or St. John's, which they're most likely going to be matched up with on Selection Sunday in that region in their bracket. And today was yet another example of BYU got punked. They were by far the softer team. Houston were the bullies. And then the only positive I can take away from this game outside of K-Bikeda was, really it was just K-Bikeda starting the second half, setting the tone and saying, hey, at least I'm not going to be bullied in this spot. I'm not going to get punked around, and setting that tone a little bit. He just didn't have enough help around them, and it was noticeable that a lot of these guys outside of him, I mean, him and Foose were kind of the only ones able to get remotely anything going, and a lot of it was just a lot of forced, chucked up shots, and BYU wasn't able to play their game, which is up-tempo. Houston mucked it up and played it slow, and that just solely dictated this game. BYU had to get out and transition early. It's how you always beat these teams. That's how you would beat a Tony Bennett Virginia team. That's how you beat this Houston team. And that's how you're going to beat a team like Tennessee if you play them in the tournament. So you got to get them up-tempo. You can't get bullied and punked like that. Franz Fraschilla was not holding back on the broadcast, Chase, and a lot of BYU fans were pissed at him after the game. And it is interesting. Sean Farnham's there. It's like, why don't we get Sean Farnham on the call? But different story. Fran was right, though, in this game, man. It's disappointing. You lose by 31 last time you play. You got absolutely bullied, absolutely thrown around, and this is the response. I understand you played a game just yesterday, but so did Houston. You don't get up for this kind of game. They were so timid, intense, and Houston's intensity and pressure got to them so much earlier in the game that they never necessarily bounced back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're never going to win a game when you shoot 31% from the field, 21% from three. But the reason BYU shot that is because of the shot selection and the pressure from Houston. It's not like BYU just had a bad shooting night. That's not what happened today. It was it was elite defense and settling for poor shots and being forced into them as well. If you're BYU, and I saw some people on Twitter and we're talking about this, like we just kind of need to see them compete. We got to see some fire. And look, it's not like BYU didn't want to win. I think they were trying really hard, and I think they were doing what they could. It was more so I just wanted to see them get mad, get upset when you're not just being punked, but you're just not playing to your best potential right now. BYU did not play a good game by their standards at all, and that's a lot of credit to Houston. But also, if you're BYU, you got to just be like, man, we're playing like trash right now. We got to figure it out. And a game's only 40 minutes, and there's stretches there where they seem to look like themselves, but for the most part, they didn't. And so when you don't have it, with nothing else, you can control, right, your attitude, your effort. We hear that all the time, but it's also being able to work hard, being willing to put yourself on the line, getting upset like Kaba, shoving dudes and getting talking tos from the ref, which is super weak, but whatever. But we just wanted to see those things from BYU. I think we saw enough. I can't say I'm super worried about this team moving forward, but we'll talk about moving forward later on. What really needed to happen, not that it matters anymore, but if you're BYU, you got to learn against these physical teams that like to pressure you at the half court and are really touchy. You got to be aggressive offensively. You got to get to the paint. You got to drive. You got to force the contact, take advantage of it, get to the free throw line. That's how you slow them down. You make the refs call the game like you want to play. And if the refs were calling a game like BYU wanted, which was touchy and getting all these free throws, then Houston backs off. And that's where you start to see openings there. Houston's just so good. But if you're BYU, you got to figure that out, right? And that's what we've seen these past win streak is this adjustment at halftime has typically always been, Karter, get to the basket. And when you get paint touches, when you get to the hoop, you either get fouled, you get a good close shot at the rim, or you're finding open guys who can either take the shot, drive themselves, or swing it. And it just puts the whole defense on their heels, and that's where you score the points. And BYU just didn't do that enough tonight. They hardly did it, right? And they were perfect 10 for 10 from the free throw line. So if you go, you're aggressive, you get fouls, then you're able to capitalize off that. They weren't. And I don't want to hear that the refs did a bad job. It was BYU's fault. They were not aggressive enough on offense. Too many possessions. The ball didn't even get closer than 25 feet to the hoop the entire time. It ended up with a chucked up three. And so it's credit to Houston. They're a really, really good team. But you gotta figure that out offensively because there will be teams like this. In fact, every team's going to come out with the same physicality and energy in March because it's winner takes all. They all want it. Yeah, well, I think from what I was most frustrated with watching this BYU team today is, the physicality was probably what everyone's going to point to, and I think that's fair. The other thing, and I think this is what the coaches are going to look at on the film after this game, is whenever BYU started to gain a little bit of momentum, just a silly turnover here. There was that one specifically in the backcourt. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. It might have been Mag, can't remember. Tried to do an outlet pass, stolen immediately. Just those little things like that just kill any chance at beating a team like Houston. You almost have to be perfect where you can't have those silly little mistakes and those silly little turnovers right there. And they didn't have a ton of turnovers in this game. 13, whatever that happens, you can still win a game with 13 turnovers, sometimes especially against an elite defense like Houston. But they were so timely and costly, especially in a game where you got down early. Yeah, absolutely. It's the little things that Houston does so well. That's what makes them so good is the way they box out, rebound, they take care of the ball, and then they force you to make those mistakes and be silly. And BYU's been that a lot this season, and they've been able to overcome it. And there's times where they've tightened it up and they look really good. And we can't freak out after one game here. I know we're like, oh, it sucks that they lost and by such a big margin to a team that we were really looking forward to see how they had changed over these 3 months. For most of it, Carter, they kind of looked the exact same as they did back in early January when they played Houston. Right?
Yeah, it wasn't much different, to be honest. We just saw a little bit more Keba Keita, and then, Dawson Baker did his thing a little bit, I guess, but yeah, it was essentially the same thing. And so, naturally, going into Selection Sunday now, excuse my voice, going into Selection Sunday now, you're going to see BYU matched up with St. John's or Tennessee likely in their region. You're not going to be pumped. The BYU fans are going to be scared about that. They're naturally, and you understand it for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like you said before, that's the proven thing that can take BYU's air out from under them and hurt their offense tremendously. We've seen them kind of overcome it, right? The Iowa State, both those games, that's an aggressive defense. And there's been times when I think they've figured it out. But just seeing that happen to Houston twice, it seems just a little unsettling. Because it just almost feels like you learned nothing, which is crazy to say and not true. BYU's done so much in this past couple months, and there's no reason that this 140-minute game is going to discredit any of that. It's just like, we just wanted to see them do better against a team that punked them and killed them. You have your chance to get them back in a conference semifinal, and you kind of did the same thing, same exact thing as always. And credit to Houston. Obviously, they're really good. They had an amazing game plan for BYU. You can tell that they studied their offense really, a lot and watched the film, and they knew how to stop it. So if you're BYU, right, you need to figure out how to counter those stops to your offense, because Houston's laying the blueprint. You've seen it here in a couple games, the way they've started. They've been able to overcome it, obviously, there in second halves that have led to that 9-game win streak. But Houston did it all 40 minutes, and 54 points might be their lowest of the season. In fact, I think it definitely is. And so this is the bad time for it to happen, man. It's March.
Yeah.
It's go time.
Yeah, that's my question going into next week now and going into March Madness is, does a loss like this, the way it happened, getting punked in this game, losing by 20 to a team you lost by 31 to already, in 2 games against this team you've lost by combined over 50 points, does this loss at all hurt the team's confidence going into March Madness? Because that is a concern for me, to be honest, where, look, you have this super high run, everything's great, 9 straight wins, you're getting talked about on every national college basketball show, and then people are going to see this tonight, people are going to see this tonight and go, oh, are they the same old, same old? If they get matched up against this certain type of team, are they going to get cooked again? And you can't blame people for thinking that way. You can't blame the national media for thinking that way if this is what we're seeing.
Yeah, it was the way it happened. I mean, Fran Fraschilla was laying into them at the end of that first half, and I think he was absolutely right. He's like, look, I liked BYU a lot, but they're just not showing me the fight. They're not showing me this attitude of, like, we're not going to get punked. I mean, that famous clip that went around of Kevin Young says the people don't punk BYU anymore. BYU does the punking. Tonight, it wasn't happening. They got punked. All right. That's plain and simple. And so it's an obvious concern, because that's what was the problem at the beginning of the season, the beginning of conference play. Going forward, if you're BYU, I think in the end of the day, this is a good thing to twist it. I know it would have been better to win, whatever. This is good more than bad, because getting punked like this right before March, I think, is a big wake-up call. I think it's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth. And I think, hopefully, they come out hungry, ready to prove that they're not going to do this anymore, that they're kind of done with being like this, even to great teams like Houston, and to make sure it never happens again. They have a lot of film to watch. I hope they play all the Fran Fraschilla clips, right? And they listen to.
I hope they play this right now.
Podcast. Yeah,
play this. You can make fun of me all you want in March Madness. If BYU goes in and has to play Tennessee in the second round or in the Sweet 16, and BYU goes out and actually does the bullying against a team like Tennessee, by all means, clown me. Come after me. I don't care. Play the clip in the locker room. Use us as bulletin board material. I do not care. But this team, this is going to be the narrative. When you play against a super physical team like Houston, and look, Houston's at that upper top tier of college basketball teams, and you got to give Houston credit, like you were saying. Like, their defense is unbelievable, and it is frustrating because I bet a lot of BYU fans watching this game go, well, they're playing really physical, but the fouls aren't getting called on them as much, and it's because BYU ended up settling a lot of the times. Like, when Yegor would drive to the basket on that pick and roll, he'd pick up his dribble every time with the free throw. And, buddy, get to the basket, go all the way, initiate contact. And so, I don't know, man. It's frustrating. This is just what you didn't want to see tonight. This is it. Like, if BYU came in this game and Houston was shooting lights out, but BYU wasn't getting punked like this, but BYU lost 80-65 or 80-70 or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't think you'd be thinking much of it, but the fact it happened the way it did, like you said, it does sting a little bit for BYU fans.
Absolutely agree. And we want to hear from those BYU fans in the chat. Let's hear what you guys have to say. It's been going a little bit, Carter. I don't know if you can see it, so I'll start reading these off. First off, our guy Nathan Hot Takes says, got to go pound down the Canes box combo to recover from that game. I'll have to catch the pod this time. Go Cougs. Shout out, Nathan. Thanks for tuning in as always. Go enjoy that box combo for us. Make sure to trade out that slaw for an extra piece of toast. Alex Beach says, not mad at the loss, but worried about the performance. I think that's a good take. It's the way it happened.
That's how people should feel. And look, is this loss the end of the world for BYU? No, and we've seen this in March Madness before, where if a team has a bad loss in their conference tournament, doesn't mean they can't go on and have a great run. I mean, for example, that Duke team last year, who was a 4 seed, I believe, or a 5 seed, they lost to NC State in their first game of the ACC tournament by a decent margin, and then ended up still making the Elite Eight. Funny enough, lost to that NC State team again in the Elite Eight. So that's what I'm saying. Like, at the end of the day, the conference tournament doesn't have much bearing on what actually happens in March Madness, but seeing that type of team, what they can do to a team like BYU, is the scary part. But we don't know a bracket. We won't see a bracket for 2 more days. Maybe BYU gets a friendly draw and doesn't have to play a team like a St. John's, like a Tennessee. And who knows, maybe BYU, we shouldn't chalk up a loss automatically to a team like that if they were to make the Sweet 16, but maybe they can beat a team like St. John's or Tennessee.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, the reason today feels so icky is because you're just like, BYU's better than this. They're better than this. And they've learned so much and they've come so far. And yet this is what we're seeing on the court right now. They have the potential to even beat, Tennessee, St. John's. They're that good of a team. They have that caliber of players. They can do those things. And it's just frustrating as a fan. And obviously, if you're watching the team, to look at them and be like, this is what you guys are rolling out with after all that, after all these months of getting to this point now and having it be this way. It sucks to see, but at the end of the day, like, this isn't the game. It matters. So they have another chance. And so hopefully this turns into, let's light a fire under their butts instead of just falling back into old habits. Our guy Nathan Hottake says, we had slow starts in 3 or 4 of our last 5 games. We were playing well enough in the rest of those games that we could still pull out the win. That's something they can't do in March. You cannot start. They've done it a lot of times. Like Nathan says, 3 or 4 of our last 5. Listen, the only good one was this last Iowa State game of the last 5 games. The rest of them started horrible. You can't do that in March. You can't be playing from behind the whole time.
1,000%. I think that's a great point as well. Also happening into Duquesne last year in March Madness as well. But you mentioned something right there at the end too. Kevin Young, sorry, gosh dang it, man. My throat's on. It better be good for the selection show. My goodness. But like you said, this loss should light a fire under the butts of this team. And I trust Kevin Young and this team to get that kind of response going into next week. It's how you can kind of look at this kind of stuff is, okay, are you going to look at it from the perspective of, their confidence is hindered after going on this streak and they're going to be a shell of themselves going forward into the tournament? Or they're going to be so pissed off after getting punked like this, they're going to come on and want to burn the world on fire, just burn everything down and just go guns blazing into the tournament, which I would lean towards that because I trust this coaching staff.
I absolutely agree. If anything, and to be realistic, it's probably in the locker room, it was kind of like, not our best performance today, guys. Let's get on the plane. Let's move on from this one. Almost like a forget about it mentality. And like, let's get back to Provo, see where our draws at, get back to work in the gym, Monday and practice and get ready to fly out and go to the NCAA tournament. But I think subconsciously that's what we need. We need that, I'm ready to burn down the world, like you said, from BYU. And then eventually I think it can come up in conversation. But I know the conversation right now is it's coach speak. It's how it works. And it's a good strat. It's just be like, move on from this one. Forget about it.
Yeah. And I don't think I don't imagine it'd be that hard to move on from something like this when your next task in front of you is the actual thing that matters most. And mainly, honestly, the only thing that does matter.
Yeah. And you got to be ready for that. That's just why we're like, if they had lost this game in any other way, I would have been like, okay, well, gear up. You guys looked good. It's just, they didn't look good.
I'll do a couple more positives from this.
Yeah.
BYU came out healthy in this game. Nobody got injured. Nobody got against a physical team like Houston. You feel like those things could definitely happen more so than against other teams. I'm not saying they're dirty or anything. They're just more physical, so those things can kind of happen. And getting out of this tournament alive, no injuries, nothing to deal with right now. I think you're very happy about that, and you're like, okay, look, let's reset. Let's rest. Let's regroup. Let's get back to Provo. Let's relax, like you were saying, and just roll into March Madness. That's one less game we have to worry about. And you know what? We don't have to play 3 games in 3 days and kill our bodies. Because I don't know if you felt this way. Did Richie look a little gassed out there?
Yeah, I thought he did. No, I think he did.
And just imagine if BYU would have came out and won a physical dogfight tonight, like it was going to be, and then you got to go play against the winner of Arizona Texas Tech.
Yeah. It'd be brutal. That's why one of those things we talked about a while is it's just better to just lose. It kind of is in the long term of things. In fact, it definitely is. Let's just be honest. Let's say it how it is. On your body, physically, everything. It's better to lose. Mentally, maybe it's better to win.
Unless it's
like
the
that.
title game.
Right.
If you make it to the title game, you can't.
Might as well win it. Yeah. Another positive, our guy Nolan Mickelson says BYU won the second half. It was by 1 point.
Right on. Shout out.
You won the second half. We're looking for positives here. You could say that they did have the proper response. It just wasn't enough to overcome a 21-point deficit.
You know what they say? The second half is the only half that actually matters. So
yeah, exactly. They did come out with just more fire. They did have that effort that we were looking for. I don't think they rolled over, which is good. Nathan says the result was so far from being decided by the refs. No credit to Tony Padilla when we were talking about that. Alex Beach says putting yourself in a 15-0 deficit against Houston is nearly impossible to overcome. And I think you're right. They're that good of a team. They're one of the best teams. So
they are that good of a team. And they were, I mean, when BYU went down 15-0, Chase, I mean, we were texting. We're like, hey, should we fire up the mics in the first half?
Yeah, exactly.
We're like, I feel like this was over. So.
Yeah, our guy Eli Bond says opened 7 up. That's been in the church fridge for years. That was BYU coming in.
Shout out! That's a callback to the Jack Carpenter joke.
Yep, so flat.
Yeah. Shout out Eli. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about a different game. We don't have to talk about BYU Houston. We could talk about Duke blowing a 24-point lead to North Carolina and then Carolina losing on a lane viation.
Luckiest team in the country? Is Duke the luckiest team in the country?
Duke the luckiest team in the country? I don't know. Van Allen Lubin. Quick analysis here. He took 5 steps on that spin. So maybe it's ball don't lie.
Feet don't lie. Lane doesn't lie.
Shout out Jalen Withers.
Our guy Sam at Sam Emery 89 says we looked objectively bad in the first half, but I think we looked significantly better in the second half.
And I think that's fair. And that's another positive to take away from tonight is, look, there was a bit of a response in the second half. It ended up not being enough, but what hindered that response was little silly mistakes. And you know this, Chase, whenever a team has momentum and you're kind of getting into it, they were cutting that lead down from 20 to 17 to 13. And once they got it to 13, they have a chance to take it to 10 or single digits. You got to knock down that big shot, that big corner 3, that big layup, whatever it is. And every single time BYU had that game-defining momentum swing shot where Houston was going to have to call a timeout afterwards and the crowd was going to start going wild, BYU missed that shot every single time in that second half. And if you're not going to make those, you're just not going to win.
Yeah, go watch UNC, their comeback. Like, you just hit the biggest shots in the biggest time. Go watch Iowa State back in Ames when they came back in that one. Like, they just hit every big shot in the biggest time. That's what you have to do, especially with a team as good as Houston.
Yes.
Right? So, like, look, you put yourself in a massive hole going down 14-0. Was it 15-0 at one point? And then you have to fight over that. I mean, not a lot of teams. There's like maybe like 2 or 3 teams that could have come back against that caliber of a Houston team going down that deficit. You just spot them 15 points. It's crazy, but obviously if you're BYU, you can't have that happen in the first place. All right, Tin Cup Man got a lot to say. Got a lot on his mind.
Let's hear it.
He says BYU won't win a game in the NCAA tournament unless they are matched up with lesser athletic players and teams that can't force them off the 3-point line and take away space. Pray BYU is matched up with another finesse team.
Oh, you're saying Ivy League, buddy? I think that's what that statement means. I think I'm hearing Yale. And also, by the way, you don't want to go against Yale. Shout out my guy Politekitis on Yale. He is a dog. And shout out Bang Bang. His perimeter defense is legit. I'm in the weeds, Chase. It's March. I'm watching March, everything.
Baby. I love it.
We were texting. What was the game we were texting about last night? It was that double overtime game. It was ridiculous.
It was La Tech in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah. That was a barn burner, dude. Holy smokes! Awesome. To answer the first part of that chat, you know what the thing is about BYU is, look, you look at a game like this against Houston. BYU's more athletic than a lot of these teams, so that's what I'm actually not that worried about. BYU is an athletic team, and they are physically imposing to a lot of teams, just not to the likes of Houston, Tennessee, and St. John's, who are more physically imposing than almost any other teams in the country. Those are the top guys in the country. And you can say, well, what about Providence? You know, when Providence kind of punked BYU. Look, if Providence and BYU played now, it's a very, very, very different result. That's not happening again. So that's why I'm not as worried about that. The first round matchups, we'll see. I think I'll be honest, I'll make a prediction right now. I think regardless of the matchup on Selection Sunday when we find out, I think BYU fans are going to go, oh no matter what the name is, whether it's Drake, VCU, UC San Diego, Lakers in 5. It does not matter. Whatever the name is on that the BYU gets matched up with, BYU fans are going to be nervous because, look, BYU just hasn't won in the first round of the NCAA tournament. There is PTSD from Duquesne last year, and so you're not going to feel comfortable going into any type of first-round game. But I like BYU's chances against a lot of these other 11 seeds. You probably saw one tonight that BYU might play in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I think BYU – I think the thing with that comment, and I think it's kind of true, but BYU's beat more athletic teams in this 9-game win streak and throughout the season. They've been able to show that they can hang and do it. So, listen, you hope for whatever, you get who you get. Like, I think honestly, BYU can beat anyone in the country, just about anyone in the country on any given night if they play their game the right way. Tonight they didn't. But the good news is they'll have to go through like 3 teams before they reach another team on Houston's level in the NCAA tournament. Doesn't mean that they're a shoe-in to do it, right? I'm not guaranteeing anything, but you're not going to see the likes of Houston again. Again, not an excuse, but BYU needs to, show up in order to do that. So Team Cap Man kept going. He goes, he said, I disagree with you guys. This was from before, talking about coming out with fire. He says it only gives maybe a 10% advantage coming up with a fire after a loss. Never translate much. It's all about players stepping up in big moments, creating their own shots against defensive teams, matchups, and coaching.
I mean, I think that's true. We're not saying coming out with fire is the only thing that can win a ball game. That would be silly to say that. It's more so, it's just an added thing to going into a big game. It's an added fire. You want any extra motivation you can going into these bigger games. And look, and you mentioned the other stuff, coaching, player matchups, talent, and all this other stuff. BYU still has a lot of that. One loss doesn't, define what this team is. And so, I'm still okay with BYU going forward. Look, if you see the matchup against these physical teams, you're going to go, I don't know, but I'm still going to say I think BYU can still make a second weekend run. Just because they lost to a really, really dang good Houston team, I'm not going to all of a sudden jump off the bandwagon.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. And I think with the fire we're talking about, the advantage isn't for really the next game. It's for the week you practice. It's the getting ready for it and feeling like you need to prepare and mentally feeling like we're not invincible anymore. We it's the fire that makes you work for the next win. Like, and then you obviously want to come out energized and ready to go so that you don't have a 15-0 run for the other team to start. So I think that's what we're talking about there. Jack says, "I'll take the loss on the chin, fellas. That's on me." Talking about the 7-Up comment from Eli. Tin Cup Man, shout out our guy. You're saying a lot. We appreciate it. Seems like you're a little upset, Tin Cup Man. Again, I don't know. I'm just reading words. But thanks for tuning in. I hope you're not too torn up over this loss. He's saying some things about BYU being a system and they have no one that can create their own shot. It just seems like you're frustrated, and it's okay. And to be fair, they don't have the likes of, they don't have, VJ Edgecombe. They don't have Cooper Flagg. The strength of this BYU team.
They will next year too, by the way.
Exactly. And the strength of this team is the fact that it's a team that there's depth, that there's a lot they can rely on. But they've shown they can win some games without shooting threes at an insane clip. But they're going to need to make a lot of those in March. He does say, though, at the end, when will BYU play some defense in the NCAA tourney? And those teams out of their strengths. I'm not sure I understand that question. When will BYU play some defense in the NCAA tourney and those teams out of their strengths? Can't say I quite am interpreting what that means. So we're just going to move on. Sorry, that's on me.
I have a hard out, so let's do some last thoughts on this Houston game. I want to do some bracketology going into Selection Sunday, and then I'm going to have to bounce out of here. You can stay with the chat if you'd like. But last thoughts on this game, kind of like what I was saying before, not that worried about this BYU team. I'm still not. This doesn't shake me to my core and think this team can't do anything in March Madness. No, I still think they can. Look, they're probably not going to have to play this Houston team. Houston's going to be a 1 seed. Houston's going to be probably the third number 1 overall seed going to Indianapolis. BYU can't play in the Indianapolis region in the Midwest. They can only go east or west. And BYU, I think right now going into bracketology, I think they're a stone cold lock for the 6th seed right now, Chase. As long as the Sunday stuff works out, might get bumped down to 7 if it's a little unfair there. But I think they're a stone cold lock as a 6 right now. And I think if I had to make a guess right now, I think we're looking at a 6-11 matchup between a VCU or a North Carolina or like the winner of a Dayton game in the first 4. And then you're going up against a 3 seed of Texas A&M. And that game's probably being played in Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I agree with you too. I think BYU is still good. I'm not going to let this, this 40 minutes of basketball change my mind about the last 2 months and what we've seen from them. But we do now know what BYU can't do, and we can't have another game tonight because they will lose the first round of the NCAA tournament if they do what they did today. It was against Houston, right? A very elite team, but you just can't get bullied around and pushed around like that if you're BYU against anyone, and every single team's going to be just dying for it, wanting it more than anything, especially since you're going to be going up against an underdog. Could be a mid-major like VCU, could also be a Power 6 team in college basketball who maybe feels like they have a chance to make a run here and that they barely snuck in on a bubble or whatever. So whoever it is, you need to be ready. But at the end of the day, it's another tough loss to a very good team. There's a lot to look at the film on, and there are still some positives. Shout out Keba Keita for playing a great game. I thought he unlocked some things offensively.
Chase, you sound so down.
I do sound down. Man, I'm not going to be
you're
I'm
depressed.
not stoked.
You're depressed.
No.
Get you a BetterHelp subscription, man. We got Chase. Let's look at the bright side. Let's look at the silver lining here. We can play. I'll play good cop, bad cop. I'll be good cop. I'll be Molly Mormon here. I'll be, I'll be the guy here. We get to see a bracket in 2 days, and we get to see BYU on Selection Sunday. We're not going to be thinking about this Houston game in 2 days from now when we're sitting here filling out 500 different brackets. And when we release the church ball bracket pool, Go sign up. I'll have that link ready tomorrow, and it's free to enter.
Amazing prize.
One bracket per person. We're not doing that bull crap where you get to make a bunch of different brackets and all that bull crap. One bracket per person, free to enter, winner take all. We have a fun prize for you. We'll release it on social media on Sunday. How about that? On Sunday, we'll release it on social media. But anyhow, look, I'm still excited about this team. I know it's tough to feel that way after a loss like this, and you go, crap, are we back to square one with this team? But at the same time, I've seen so many positive things over the last 9 games outside of this one, where I go, I don't think we should just throw all 9 of those games away just because of this one loss.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I hope I wasn't
there
coming
you
across
go.
as,
There's a smile there.
Woe is me. I'm also so mad that UNC lost. I hate Duke. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
No, I actually like Duke. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, Sunday we get to see BYU in the bracket. We get to talk about this matchup specifically. We get to watch an egregious amount of film. We get to watch an egregious amount of conference tournament championships tomorrow and even Sunday morning. And it's the best time of the year. And BYU is right in the middle of it, guys. So like Karter says, just enjoy it. Just enjoy the ride. Yeah, go ahead.
I want Carolina in the first round.
All right. I love that.
BYU matches up very well against this North Carolina team. I want it on the record. I've watched basically every single North Carolina basketball game this year. I know what I'm talking about here. Just trust me, fellas. Trust me. Anyhow, but going back to the bracketology of it, I don't think BYU Lenardi had them as a 5. Like I said again, I think they end up as a 6. I think that's a lock now. Worst case scenario, 7, and that's because of the Sunday rule. But I don't think that's a problem. I would much rather be. It's kind of the argument between would you rather be a 10 or an 8 seed in this year's tournament? Well, you'd rather be a 10, so you don't have to face the 1 in the second round potentially. If you want to make any sort of run in this year's tournament, you definitely don't want to be a 4 or a 5 or an 8 or a 9 and potentially have to play a 1 in the first couple games of the tournament. BYU being a 6 opens up their path to where, hey, if they get a favorable draw, and also if you're going into the Sweet 16 and you're looking ahead of that 2 seed, these 2 seeds fall all the time in the round of 32 to a 7 or 10, especially when you look at the other 7 or 10 seeds in this year's bracket. These guys are elite. I mean, even a team like Memphis can go out and beat a number 2 seed this year. So I think BYU is in a great position going into March Madness to make a run, and we'll see what happens, man. Anything can happen in March.
Anything can happen.
I think BYU fans are going to be pissed off at me after this episode. Like, why are you positive? Why are you okay with this? Because it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, we talked about this before the tournament. We're like, this would be really cool. Win a game or 2, and then I think we said ideal scenario was win 1, lose 1, right?
Yes, and it is the way it happened. I understand that. Another thing before we go, because I do have to get out of here very quickly. But
yeah,
I know I'm flip flopping here.
I was going to be negative.
No, not at all. It's just a hypothetical.
Yeah.
This is in no way an excuse. Houston was winning this game no matter what today, 10 times out of 10. The better team. Give them all the credit in the world. Kelvin Sampson is one of the best coaches in college basketball. Elite stuff. Do you think Cannon Catchings playing in today's game makes a difference at all? Because, I mean, and let me explain why I think he could. I'm not saying he would have, but why he could is that, look, he's a kind of guy where it doesn't really matter who's defending him. It's just a matter of if he's on that night or not. And you're not blocking Cannon Catching's shot because his release is so high. And so I think him in a game like this playing would have made a big difference if he was hot. But I'm not saying it would have changed this game and BYU would have won or anything. But I am saying I think it could have made a difference.
Yeah, I think it could have. I think it completely depended on what kind of Cannon night we would have gotten.
And look, the honest answer is we probably wouldn't have gotten a good one because Houston would have closed out on everything and then he wouldn't have had a chance to breathe. But if he is hot those nights, you never know with him. He can just all of a sudden just start splashing 3 after 3 after 3 in dudes' faces because you can't block his shot with his wingspan and his size.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. That was a random thought.
It just popped in my head. Sorry.
It's going to be a bummer not having Cannon in March. He seems like the perfect candidate to have
really
insane run. I actually don't know, but it just looks like it, doesn't it? Sorry, don't aggregate that. I don't have any official.
I was like, do you have it? I was like, you should have texted me if you had inside info.
Sorry, I don't have any info whatsoever.
We usually text each other if we got some inside info.
He's like offended, like you didn't even tell.
I would have been offended. If I know something that's going on, I let you know. We can't 100% go public with everything.
No, if I know, you know, and if you know, I know. That's how it works.
That'd been hilarious if you accidentally broke it and you didn't know.
No,
we do not. We do not have any info, as you can clearly tell.
No info. It just
we
looks
are
like
not in Kansas City, so
it just looks like it. I mean, it just kind of seems like there hasn't been a push to get him back, or maybe that's been the plan. And maybe it's like this week is the week we get him back. I could be completely wrong, but the point stands. He's the perfect candidate to just have another one of those. Like against Baylor, going perfect, having an insane night in March. The great thing about this BYU team is, though, and that we talked about, it's deep, man. A lot of characters, a lot of skill sets, a lot of people to throw it out at you, a lot of potential March Madness candidates for those characters. And still a lot to love about the Cougars, right with Karter. Sorry if we were a little negative this episode. We just wanted to analyze it, the good and the bad. But the good thing is that game's over. Big 12 tournament's over. They're on a flight to Provo here probably in the next hour. And, man, we get to watch them. I don't know if they'll be broadcast. Sometimes, they pick and choose these teams who they show their reaction on Selection Sunday. But we'll be watching it, and then we'll be going live right after and talk about this bracket, dude. It's the best time of the year. Might as well be Christmas Eve, Karter.
Yep, it's great. It's Christmas Eve. I'm excited. We got all the conference tournament games going on. I'm still excited to watch all the title games over the next couple days, but I got to bounce. Are you going to hang on with the chat, or should we close up shop?
Let's close up shop. I got to bounce as well.
All right. So
shout out to everyone in the chat. Sorry we didn't get it to everyone today.
Sorry we didn't get to everyone. We will get to everyone live on the selection show. We're going to go live right after CBS releases the bracket. We're not going to do it during it and do it in a reaction. The second CBS releases the full bracket, we'll be live on Twitter at ChurchballPod. So go follow. And then that show will be out immediately after. We'll get that edited and posted and out on the YouTube and Apple, Spotify right after. And it's going to be the ESPN Tournament Bracket Pool Challenge under the Church Ball Group Bracket Group. Follow on all our social medias, and we'll make sure to have that posted for you. Free to enter, winner take all prize. We'll have that prize for you on Sunday on our social medias at Chase_Rogers0, at CarterBA, at ChurchballPod on everything. We will see you guys Sunday night when we have a bracket to fill out, Chase. I cannot wait. It's the best time of the year, baby. It's the best time of the year, and we'll see y'all then. Adios.